Hello and welcome to the module Assembling Your Deal Team. You won't be able to close a transaction without a good deal team behind you. The question really boils down to is who do you want on that team and what tasks do you want to assign them. And just keep in mind, with your deal team, they're there to assist you, but at the end of the day, you're going to make the final decisions when it comes to your transaction. So this video is really going to outline what's required to get a deal complete, to make sure you have the right experience and the capabilities on your team to help support you. Topics covered will be deal team functions that are needed, how to assess the quality of people on your deal team, and how to keep control over your deal while delegating to others. Let's get into it. Let's talk about the deal team functions that are needed during the transaction time. As the owner, if you're going to lead the deal, you still have to recognize that your owner function is still going to be different than the deal lead function. As the owner, your main job is to keep up sales and performance, especially when you begin interacting with the buyer. Worst case scenario is that you get so involved in the deal process that your daily operations and performance starts to slip, and then the buyer is no longer interested in your business. So the deal lead, ideally it's you working in conjunction with an investment banker, a broker, or advisor. And this person will help quarterback the deal process and all of your advisors. Your point of, your main job at this point is to stay on track, while also being involved in the deal somewhat, but hopefully someone can actually lead it for you. You'll also need a financial lead. This is going to be someone who preps your financials, in QuickBooks and Xero, that could actually speak to the numbers to the buyer. Obviously you'll be in tune with your financials to a point, but you're going to need some type of expert, so to speak, to be able to communicate some of the entries and the methodology used in your financials. And they'll also be able to work with your internal bookkeeper if you have one, CPAs, tax counsel, very crucial in the deal. Also, you'll need a legal lead, also another very crucial part. They'll be responsible for negotiating all of the legal agreements with the buyer's counsel, so your purchase agreements, employment agreements, any legal agreements under the sun during the transaction, they will handle on your behalf. And then you'll probably need a due diligence lead as well, because the due diligence phase, as you've probably discovered by now, will be quite complex in terms of your time. So it's going to be hard to manage a lot of the requests that come in. So there'll also be a lot of buyer calls needed. So the due diligence lead will also make sure that they work on all of these requests, making sure they get done in a timely fashion and in the same format as the buyer request. And they'll also work with the buyer and the seller's attorneys on the due diligence schedule. So it's very important to have someone coordinating all of the incoming requests. And then lastly, you'll need an operational lead, specifically for a smooth focus on the transition. After exit, you're going to need someone to be able to speak to the buyer regarding, let's say, supply chain or any other types of operations that are on a day-to-day basis to help run the business. So all of these functions are going to be needed during the deal phase. If you decide to take all of these on by yourself, I'd say you would be really missing out on an opportunity to close a successful deal, because with all of these functions that need to be completed, you may take away a lot of time from running your day-to-day business, and therefore, as I mentioned, slipping on performance, which is what you don't want to do. So really make sure you take the time to define these roles and pick people who will be best suited to help you out and assist you during this time. Let's talk about how to pick the members of your deal team and how to assess the quality of the people on this team. First and foremost, cultural fit is very important. You're going to be going into battle with this team. You're going to spend lots of hours working in a pressure cooker during the deal phase. So you want to make sure that you're working with people that you actually want to work with during this stressful time. So it's important that you get along and you know the person, and that you could see them yourself working with them in the trenches during this high pressure time. You want to make sure they have a track record of the performance for the task that you're assigning them. You don't want any surgeon reading a manual right before your brain surgery. So same concept here is, you're going to make sure that a lot of these deal team members you pick, for example, you're a lawyer, you want to make sure that they have the skills needed to achieve a successful exit. You don't want to hear this is their first time at the rodeo. So make sure you choose wisely based on their skill set as well and their past experience. And then the specific experience to you as well. some prior experience working with them is definitely preferable. They'll understand how you work, and you both develop some type of cadence that you've used in the past that'll help you during this stressful time and the pressure of working these late nights and weekends and things like that together. So you'll kind of have an understanding of each other's work ethics from the get-go. And of course, they'll have a knowledge of your business as well, which will be crucial when you're in deal mode. And then the willing to fully understand you is also important. You want to make sure that they understand what you're looking for, and what your transaction represents to you, how important that is. And you want to make sure they listen to you and follow your leads. So you want to make sure they're there to properly support you and understand your needs and wants during this time. And again, their commitment. You want to make sure that every member of this deal team is highly committed. It's going to be crunch time during this phase, and you want to make sure they're all able to deliver on their tasks assigned. So when you're in this middle of this in the middle of the deal, and it's this crunch time, we say it's there's late nights, there's weekends, it's kind of all hands on deck to get done what needs to get done to achieve a successful exit. So you want to make sure that not only are these people skilled and able to work with you, but also that their commitment and dedication is there to help you cross the finish line. So with all of these tasks and traits, it should guide you on who you think should be assigned to your deal team and what tasks they should be given. Lastly, I want to discuss how to keep control over your deal while also delegating to others, because it could be a very difficult balancing act as an owner during this time. First, you want to make sure there's frequent communication. This is really, really crucial. You want to have weekly meetings set up with your deal lead and other members of the deal team at the start of the process. The first meeting should be where you actually put a project plan into place, get some action items jotted down with some deadlines established. And the meetings thereafter should be to evaluate the progress that you've discussed from the prior meeting, as well as anything that's happened in between the meetings. It's your time to ask key questions and make sure the team gets alignment, and make sure that the deal team is all synced up on the next progression point and the next points of deadlines to be met. The meetings will become more and more frequent as you progress towards the close date. Also, you want to get controls in place from the get-go. You want to set ground rules because, again, you want your deal team to know how you want to operate because, again, you are going to be running the show at the end of the day. So, for example, you want to maybe lay down the groundwork where, your due diligence lead, let them know that they shouldn't respond or provide any documents to a buyer until you sign off and your legal lead signs off. Same thing with financials. Maybe your bookkeeper shouldn't deliver the financials that have been prepared in QuickBooks to the buyer without you first looking through them and asking some basic level questions that you think the buyer would have for the accountant. So things of that nature. You want to kind of get a proper cadence with the team from the very start so that everybody knows their roles. And also, you want to make sure that you attend any key meetings with the buyer and their advisors together. This will keep everybody in the loop on the entire transaction process. And also, it gives you an opportunity to speak up. If you or your team, your lead isn't clear on any of the issues, now's your time to speak up and kind of clear the air. And as you progress on these items, it'll definitely be a value add. Because, for example, if your legal lead is, hung up speaking to the buyer's attorney on a certain item on the purchase agreement, and from a business perspective it doesn't really make sense for you guys to be spending that much time on it, here's the time where you would chime in and say, from a business perspective, let's put this issue to bed by doing XYZ. So when all parties are involved on these bigger calls, especially towards the end of the deal, it will make things run a bit more smoothly. So you just want to make sure that you're communicating with your deal lead on all of these calls with the buyer, on every weekly meeting that they have, to make sure that you're all aligned so that there's no surprises at the very end right before close that you're not aware of. So by having your internal meetings as well as your external meetings with the buyer frequently, especially towards the close date, will definitely ensure that there will be a successful exit at a timely fashion. Here's a quick quote from an advisor, a deal lead, and it really kind of hones in on what we've been discussing. I represent you, of course, but more than that, you want me to represent the deal. So you're going to need this advisor, deal lead to really, obviously represent you and, your needs, but also oversee the entire deal to make sure it gets over the line and is successful. So you really want to make sure someone's in your corner to kind of oversee all aspects of the deal. And don't forget, I know I've mentioned it earlier, even though you have the deal lead as your quarterback, someone in your corner, at the end of the day, it really is you who is making all the final decisions in your transaction. So just keep that in mind. You are ultimately the final decision maker, but the deal lead will be there to support you and quarterback you. And just to recap, the quality of your deal team has a significant impact on your ability to successfully complete a deal, as well as an impact on the quality of the overall outcome that you achieve, meaning not only the consideration you'll be paid, but also the risk allocation between you and the buyer in the transaction legal agreements.